¿Cómo están, embajadores de marca? Me siento muy contento. El día de hoy tenemos un gran invitado. Les presento a Maximiliano. Tiene 3 meses y hoy, el día de hoy, me tocó cuidarlo. Y por eso va a estar con nosotros en este closet, en este cierre. Ya estoy empezando a pochear. Bueno, es que quiero decirles que tenemos una entrevista muy importante, un programa súper padre con GrowthHax. Estos amigos están en Tijuana y en Los Ángeles. Ellos son unos grandes emprendedores y hoy en día ayudan a toda la sociedad, a todo el ecosistema de emprendedores, no solamente en México, sino también en Latinoamérica y próximamente en otros países. Por eso es que quise hacer este cierre de la primera temporada de Embajadores de Marca, una experiencia más agradable. Es la primera vez que lo voy a hacer en inglés. Ya lo he hecho con varias, desde la consultoría, desde BXP, pero es la primera vez que grabo una entrevista, un programa con otros amigos en Los Ángeles o en el extranjero, ¿no? Entonces espero que les guste bastante. Vamos a tener una nueva temporada. Se viene Ani Salomón desde Argentina. Vamos a estar trayéndonos a todos los emprendedores de Latinoamérica para darles una nueva experiencia en lo que es Embajadores de Marca, la segunda temporada. No se lo pierdan. Vamos a ver a estos amigos que nos traen una información sobre mentoría, que es mentoring. Vamos a tenerlo en 3 bloques. Lo que es inspirar, inspire, empoderar, empower y take action, toma acción. Sobre estas 3 bloques vamos a saber cómo un emprendedor necesita tener toda esa espiral y sobre todo tomar acción para que crea en su proyecto, sobre todo que conozca esta infraestructura de emprendimiento, de emprendedores como lo somos, que podemos acercarlos con personas para que puedan tener éxito en todo su proyecto o en todo su emprendimiento. Espero les guste, dejen sus comentarios y suscríbanse. ¡Vamos!
Bienvenidos a un episodio más de Embajadores de Marca. Con Humberto Rosales, encuentra tu voz.
Hello, brand ambassadors. This is Humberto Rosales. I'm very glad to start this new episode of Brand Ambassadors, not only just in Mexico City. We already jumped to Tijuana and LA. We have a great guest today that is going to inspire us and is going to share their experience being entrepreneurial. By this time, I would like to tell you something that I have a great guest, which is my son. He's already 3 months, and that this is going to be really awesome. So first of all, I would like to introduce you. Rob Ryan is a proud dad, founder of GrowthHax Relationship Builder, connector and super mentor of founders and executive leaders worldwide. He's a storyteller, industry influencer, and regular public speaker of entrepreneurship in the 21st century. He's a 4X founder of CEO who started and raised venture capital to his first software company in 1999. He has built businesses across the world for 30 years, including significant time in China, India, Taiwan, Japan, and Hong Kong. Finally, is now fully invested helping build developing economies in Latin America. Well, this is a quick introduction of what Rob's Ryan background is, and he's going to tell us about more. And then I would like to jump with his partner, which is the co-founder of GrowthHax. His name is David Peguero. Good to hear that, because David Peguero was born in Mexico City and then he jumped to Tijuana and he was raised there. And he has a really good background of consulting services and more than that. He has the opportunity to be in a program of changing leadership businesses, and more about that in the United States and the whole Latin America. Welcome, guys.
Thank you for having us.
I would like to start with you, Rob. How GrowthHax start in the business in LA, in United States, and how was the mission or the vision to start helping others to find their voice and obviously to be an entrepreneurial.
Sure. Thank you, Umberto. And thank you to everybody that's listening in your audience. Grateful to be here. I do want to say quickly, first of all, since folks will be watching this on video as well as listening, we thought it would be super authentic to have this be the first podcast where you can actually see that people are in the pandemic, right? So this is me in the pandemic in Los Angeles, and I'm actually out on a walk this morning. And so coming to you a little bit active and live from Los Angeles to share our stories today with my partner David down in Tijuana. You know, the beginning story, the origin story on my end, really, before I met David, was this idea that 30 years of business, 20 some odd years of entrepreneurship, and I learned that consistently there always seemed to be one thing missing, right? There always seemed to be one missing variable related to entrepreneurs, and it was that they never seemed to be able to get easy access, affordable access, ready access to the information and the knowledge that they needed to make good decisions in their businesses. So about 2015-ish, after leaving running a prior company that was owned by some friends of mine, I decided that this was going to be my mission in life, was going to be to try and create solutions or services that would help provide mentorship to the entrepreneurs around the world that didn't always necessarily have easy access to it, right? And so what that meant in my worldview at that moment was that we were going to try and create something around serving the massive amount of entrepreneurs, the average entrepreneur, the regular guy or girl, as opposed to the elite, wealthy, privileged people who can always have access to these types of things because they can afford it, or because the communities that they're a part of provide these types of things naturally. So that was my real mission initially, before it ever became about Latin America, was to try and create a company whose purpose would be to serve the development of founders, because fundamentally I believe most of our great problems that we face in our countries and in the world are ultimately solved by really clever, curious, smart, hardworking entrepreneurial people. Doesn't mean entrepreneurship solves all problems, but it means that those types of people are more needed in the world than are more lawyers or more doctors or more librarians, per se, in my humble opinion, right? I just fundamentally believe that more entrepreneurial thinkers are needed. And so I wanted to spend this latter kind of chapter of my entrepreneurial life trying to build something to help other entrepreneurs, not just to enrich myself.
According to your experience and your background, what was the key point that you found in entrepreneurs in Mexico and Latin America?
So there's two ways to answer that question. One is the traditional answer, which we can talk about in a minute. But the truth is, and this is a great segue to allow David to tell part of our story. The truth is that I myself, GrowthHax as a company and myself as an individual, never would have been in Latin America had it not be for David. And so David can tell you why he thought that there was a unique need or opportunity to do the development of founders in Mexico better than was being done, because he was living in it while I was living in this bubble up here in Los Angeles, unaware of the opportunity. Now, again, there's a secondary part of this which we could talk about, but I think I'd rather let David kind of tell you the story of what he saw the need was in Latin America, and then basically how he convinced me that this existed. So, David.
Yes, thank you very much. So we'll say this part in Spanish, I guess. Pues fue cuando conocí a Rob y que luego vamos a platicar esa parte de cómo nos conocimos, porque es muy interesante. Pero cuando Rob viene aquí a Tijuana y que lo conozco y que estamos platicando, él me comenta algo y me dice que cuando él estaba en Estados Unidos, las preguntas que le hacía a la gente cuando él estaba empezando su negocio eran las clásicas preguntas de cómo haces dinero, cuál es tu modelo de negocios, quién es tu competencia y todo ese tipo de preguntas, ¿no? Que normalmente se le hacen a los emprendedores. Y él obviamente podía contestarlas, ¿no? Y decirles, mira, este es mi modelo de negocios, el mercado y todo. Pero cuando él llegó aquí a México y que llegó aquí a Tijuana y que empezó a conocer a emprendedores de aquí de México, de Monterrey, de Ciudad de México y todo, las preguntas que les hacían era totalmente diferente. Las preguntas eran, ¿ya está listo? O sea, necesito tu ayuda, ¿cuánto cuesta? O sea, quiero hacerlo. Entonces él se dio cuenta de que había una necesidad muy importante de este servicio específico que le estaba tratando de ofrecer, que era como la mentoría, la asesoría, el seguimiento para el emprendedor, apoyos para el emprendedor, y que era algo que él no estaba recibiendo esa misma apertura por parte del mercado en Estados Unidos, y se dio cuenta que en México y Latinoamérica sí, estaba la gente abierta y necesitada justamente de esto, porque por la experiencia que él tenía, la experiencia de venir de un mercado más maduro que el mercado mexicano. Entonces, aprovechando los grandes emprendedores que tenemos aquí en México, conectándolos con la experiencia que se tiene y conectándolos con el conocimiento que ellos necesitan, fue cuando se abrió esta idea de abrir mercado en México y Latinoamérica.
Excelente, David, muchas gracias por ese comentario, y la verdad es que yo me siento muy orgulloso de como se los dije, David nació aquí en la Ciudad de México, se mudó a Tijuana, y desde entonces su trayectoria ha sido de gran aporte, de gran valor a toda la comunidad del ecosistema de emprendimiento en México. Y de ahí algo que me gustaría que nos platicaras ahorita sobre el poquito de background que nos diste, pero cómo es que GrowthHax salta a Latinoamérica, a Chile, Argentina. Hemos visto que andan por allá, y eso se me hizo bastante interesante porque pues no solamente lo hacemos locales, piensa global y actúa local, ¿no? Y de ahí pues cómo han generado ese valor y sobre todo ese aporte, ese mentoring, que es ahorita de lo que vamos a hablar, está buenísimo. Pero gracias a ti, a tu background, Rob encuentra esa oportunidad de negocio y boom, estallan a Latinoamérica.
Así es, muchas gracias. And Rob, I think this is going to be the part where we're going to share a little bit of how we met. So I'm going to start my part of the story and then you can share yours.
Yes, this is the best part of the story.
Sí, entonces voy a contarte un poquito de cómo nos conocimos, porque esa la verdad es que ese fue el inicio de esto que ni siquiera estaba planeado y que simplemente se dio. Yo en el 2015, yo estaba aquí en Tijuana, yo estaba trabajando para una incubadora de negocios de alto impacto, cuando estaba todo este boom de lo de INADEM y los apoyos y todo, era una incubadora certificada por INADEM. Entonces yo estaba trabajando ahí en el área de marketing y me tocaba justamente hacer todo este trabajo de relaciones públicas, de conectar, buscar apoyos para emprendedores y todo, ¿no? Entonces de repente un día yo estaba en Twitter y alguien que yo seguía en Twitter, que ni siquiera me acuerdo quién es, retuitea algo que Rob pone, ¿no? Entonces lo veo, me meto a su perfil y digo, oh, se ve interesante lo que él hace, decía que era mentor y negocios y todo eso. Entonces lo empiezo yo a seguir y empezamos como a interactuar, le daba like a lo que él comentaba y todo. Y de repente un día yo le mando un tweet, ¿no? Que decimos que es como este tweet que cambió completamente nuestras vidas, así por más cursi que suene, pero fue la verdad. Entonces le mando un tweet y no sé si te acuerdas que en aquel entonces en Twitter no podías mandar mensaje directo si no se seguían mutuamente. Entonces él me empieza a seguir y cuando empieza a seguir yo le mando un mensaje directo. Le digo, oye, fíjate que yo estoy en Tijuana, trabajo en una incubadora de negocios, ¿por qué no hablamos, ¿no? Por Skype. Entonces me contesta y me dice, sí, vamos a hablar. Entonces agendamos una llamada por Skype y yo le empecé a contar un poquito lo que estaba pasando en Tijuana, en el ecosistema emprendedor, lo que hacíamos en la incubadora. Y nosotros teníamos un programa con el consulado de Estados Unidos aquí en Tijuana y lo invitamos y le dije, oye, fíjate que hay un programa donde ellos te traen a Tijuana y te pagan todo y vienes a dar una plática, conferencias y todo, ¿no? Entonces, para no hacerte el cuento largo, él dice que sí. Entonces viene en mayo del 2016 a Tijuana y le armamos una agenda de 2-3 días donde fuimos a universidades, platicó con distintas universidades, con emprendedores, y fueron 2 días muy intensos. Entonces él abre completamente este panorama hacia Tijuana y nos hacemos muy buenos amigos. Entonces a partir de ello empiezo pues de manera informal a platicar con él, ayudarle, a conectarlo con gente. Me empieza a hacer más preguntas, obviamente, de lo que él vio aquí en Tijuana. Le empiezo a conectarlo fuimos a un evento en Monterrey, fuimos a un evento a la Semana del Emprendedor en la Ciudad de México, fuimos a un evento a León, y él fue como conferencista a todos esos lugares a través de los contactos que nosotros teníamos. Entonces empezó a ver mucho el valor que tenía, pues lo que yo podía aportar, y esta conexión binacional que mencionas tú, ¿no? Entonces justamente en ese inter lo contacto con una aceleradora que se llama Startup Chile, y de repente cuando cuelga la llamada me dice, oye, fíjate que me piden que aplique al programa, ¿no? Y dije, órale, pues adelante. Entonces él entra a este programa de aceleración. Somos seleccionados generación 17 en el 2017 justamente, y se va a vivir a Chile. Entonces ya entramos de lleno completamente al mercado latinoamericano a través de este programa de aceleración. pero todo pasó justamente en ese momento en el cual él estaba enfocado en Estados Unidos, estaba enfocado en apoyar emprendedores allá. Y en el momento en que se abre esa puerta hacia Tijuana, y no es casualidad que por eso Tijuana se convierte como en esta puerta hacia México, en esta puerta hacia lo que es Latinoamérica. O sea, no sé si sabes, pero por ejemplo hay un dato curioso de que cuando Uber quiso abrir mercado en Latinoamérica, la primera oficina que puso fue aquí en Tijuana y aquí empezó operaciones. O sea, antes que Río de Janeiro, Ciudad de México y todo, empezó aquí, ¿no? Entonces, Tijuana abre este mercado hacia lo que es México, Latinoamérica, y así es como surge. Y justamente es por esta conexión que es de alguien de experiencia de Estados Unidos con alguien mexicano un poco más joven con experiencia en todo esto, y juntos nos complementamos y se creó este equipo que pudo abrirse paso a todo lo que fue México, Latinoamérica.
Okay, you just told the entire story.
I told my version of the story.
Like you told that story like almost through like 2019. I felt like that.
Muy interesante, really good, interesting story. And
see, if I can add to it, I'll add my perspective, right? So it really breaks into two parts. And by the way, this goes back, and I think it kind of addresses a little bit of the question that we left unanswered from the prior question about the uniqueness or the similarities that exist in entrepreneurship in Latin America. Right? David just talked about it a bit. So for me, first of all, like this is the greatest lesson in the creativity and like opportunity of entrepreneurship, right? In a global world that is, especially now, like living under this pandemic where we're so disconnected, but yet so connected, right? Like it would not have mattered had we been living in a pandemic in 2015, 2016, had David reached out to me on a DM via Twitter. Wouldn't have mattered. Like it would have just been him doing the same thing that he did now. He could have been doing that, or he did then, he could have been doing now. Except I wouldn't have been able to as easily travel to Mexico, right? And respond to his opportunities. But it's that constant idea for entrepreneurs. I think there's a lesson to be taken from us, and not that we're so wildly successful and we're not some crazy unicorn, by private, investor valuations, but a great example of here was a 20-something millennial Mexicano in Tijuana who really understood his market, who was really passionate about entrepreneurship and marketing and growth and a belief that there could be a better way to do things, which is fundamentally, I think, the basic principle personality trait of every great entrepreneur, is that you fundamentally believe that there is a better way to do something, right? And so he believed that, and he used the tools that were available to him, in his case, Twitter, and he reached out to a complete stranger who he knew a little bit about from a distance because of maybe things I had written or shared, but he didn't know me personally or deeply, right? And so he proposed an opportunity. And then the flip side of that, here's an old Generation X guy, American businessman, who never in his wildest dreams thought about helping entrepreneurs or building the company that I talked about that I was building for Mexico or for Latin America. And he says, come down here and let me show you a world where a lot of what I think you're interested in is happening here as well. And I think what you talk about wanting to do to help entrepreneurs there, we could do here. And honestly, I think there's more of a need here than there is where you are. But like, come down here and let's just like, let me show you that. Not, I'm going to sell it. He wasn't pitching me. He was literally just inviting an opportunity that, as an entrepreneur on my end, I did the other thing that entrepreneurs should always try and do more often of, which is I leaned in. I said yes, right? That doesn't make me that much smarter or more talented. It just makes me more open-minded, right? And more willing to take risks and more willing to take chances. And I had nothing to lose, right, in this circumstance. So I think that, to me, the great testament of, other than the fact that it's just amazingly cool that you could build a relationship like we have now built, which has become not only founders and co-founders and partners in the business and friends and essentially almost like family, right? I mean, like, to build that from a direct message in Twitter is an incredible story of how much of the world is close to all of us if we just think it is and take the chances to put ourselves out there. So I always love to amplify David in this story, because without it, GrowthHax and everything we've done, all of the rest of the story that he shared, all of those places that we've gone, all of the places that I've traveled, all of the speeches we've given, all of the, dozens and dozens of institutional clients that we've worked with throughout Latin America to help them do what they do to help entrepreneurs, but do it better. None of that happens if he doesn't send me one DM on Twitter, which there was probably like a 95% chance that the recipient would never reply to, let alone say yes. Right. So in this example, people often hold me up and say like, well, Rob's the experienced, accomplished entrepreneur. Right? David was running was teaching entrepreneurship and marketing at the university and was running a business incubator. And the truth is that David in our relationship may have done the single most entrepreneurial thing that we've ever done by literally sending me that DM, right? Because everything after that only happens because of that. So take to all entrepreneurs that are listening, or small business people, PNAs, no matter what industry, take that as a great lesson that, you're never too small, you're never too insignificant, you're never too unknown, you're never too out of the spotlight, you're never not important enough or famous enough. Your voices always matter. Because if you just reach out with honesty and authenticity and passion and a clear message, he was clearly inviting me to come and do something in his community that he knew I had a passion for and that he thought I might respond to and have interest in. You never know what can happen after that, right? And we're only a fraction of the way into our journey. Right, so we're nowhere near like done or halfway. Like we're just coming around the first corner, and again, so that means that there's thousands more, if not more than that, entrepreneurs to be helped and to be motivated and to be taught how to be better entrepreneurs so they can build better businesses. Strictly as a result of David sending one DM on Twitter. So I can't overstate that enough. What an amazing part of the story that is.
Absolutely agree, Rob. Thanks for sharing. And also, David, it's a really great history about two different persons, different ages, and different spaces, and also countries become one. And I would like to have this in 4 points. The first one is about relationships. No matter what, if you're in India, or you're in China, if you're in Argentina, or you're in Mexico, we're persons, we're humans. So it's based on relationships. We all need relationships. The second one is values. I guess that was the second point, that you each other became on one company, and obviously in the great partners that you are already. The third is using the tools that we can right now use. For example, the Zoom, the Twitter, the DM that you send, what else? Facebook, the other social media tools to be connected. That's the really good point that right now COVID made to create this kind of conversations the way I just contact you the same way, because we share the same values to help others can create good businesses around the world. So
sí, 100% agree.
Totally percent. En David, eso está muy interesante. La verdad es que es un orgullo para nosotros, para mí como mexicano, echarte las flores, darte las gracias por ser este tipo de embajador de marca, esta persona, este líder, este mentor en lo que estás haciendo en Tijuana y ayudando a toda la gente, y sobre todo a Rob, que es una persona súper interesante y aparte de la edad que pueden tener, pues está conectado, se bajó a que conozca todo esto que está pasando en Latinoamérica y en México, y han creado una gran relación. Y por eso me gustaría ahorita, vamos a tener el tema principal, que es mentoring, mentoría. ¿Cómo puedes inspirar, empoderar y tomar acción? Por eso me gustaría que ahorita en español tú nos dijeras qué se espera de GrowthHax, de David Peguero, para que ahorita se base en todo lo de mentoring. ¿A dónde vas en 2021? ¿Cómo te estás yendo? ¿Qué esperamos de GrowthHax en estos 3 bloques?
Muchas gracias. Sí, justamente la parte central de nuestra compañía, y que fue como de las primeras cosas que me llamó la atención una vez cuando me uní al proyecto, fue esa parte de A mí siempre me gustó la parte de servir a los demás, ayudar a la gente, y era parte de lo que yo hacía ya en la incubadora, entonces yo tenía experiencia en eso. Entonces cuando Rob me platica de la idea que tiene, que es esta parte de ayudar a emprendedores, conectarlos con mentores, al conocimiento que ellos necesitan, guiarlos, ayudarlos y todo, pues a mí me da mucho la atención y es lo que hemos estado trabajando durante todo este tiempo. Y lo que nuestra misión es justamente apoyar e impactar la vida de muchísimos emprendedores y apoyarlos a crecer y que puedan ellos tener el conocimiento que necesitan. Entonces estamos muy comprometidos a poder crear mentores que puedan generar valor a los emprendedores y que los emprendedores puedan recibir esa asesoría, esa mentoría, ese conocimiento, esa guía que ellos necesitan para continuar en sus proyectos y seguir impactando sus vidas, sus familias y obviamente la comunidad en la cual ellos se encuentren. Es por eso que nuestro enfoque está en estos lugares donde está en desarrollo, donde hay muchísimo potencial para poder emprender, que es México, Latinoamérica, eventualmente nos encantaría irnos a África, la parte de Asia y así seguir creciendo. O sea, tenemos la fortuna de poder ya haber dado mentoría en estos distintos lugares poco a poco, como un granito de arena así a la vez, pero vamos creciendo. ¿Y qué es lo que viene? Digo, la verdad es que tenemos muchísimos planes para este 2020, digo, ya no queda ni hablar de lo que ha sido este año, tenemos muchísimos planes, estábamos listos para poder dar el siguiente paso y pues llegó esto que se llama 2020 y nos así como a todos, ¿no? Nos barrió completamente, hizo que nos reinventáramos, pero justamente nos metió en este mundo virtual. Entonces hemos estado haciendo distintos eventos para apoyar a los emprendedores. Tenemos un evento que se llama Mentor Mashup, en el cual invitamos a mentores, invitamos a emprendedores y los conectamos en vivo en un evento de un par de horas, que es un evento para la comunidad. Eventualmente lo que queremos hacer, y que de hecho ya estamos trabajando en ello, de igual manera se puso en pausa por este año, pero es crear una comunidad en la cual podamos nosotros apoyar emprendedores. O sea, no queremos crear otra incubadora, no queremos crear otro programa de aceleración. Queremos crear realmente un programa que pueda ser de valor para los emprendedores y que puedan ellos recibir la atención que necesitan para poder crecer. Entonces estamos tratando de hacer así como un tipo club de emprendedores para poder apoyar a emprendedores hacia crecer y seguir avanzando. Y todo con base a lo que es la mentoría, lo que es nuestra experiencia, lo que es el conocimiento, contactos que ellos necesitan.
Me gustaría cerrar contigo con dos preguntas. ¿Por qué te consideras un embajador de marca? ¿Por qué crees que México y Latinoamérica necesitan más embajadores de marca?
Muchas gracias. Yo creo que la parte, de construcción de lo que es ser un embajador de marca, lo que es construir tu marca, es ser auténtico y ser tú realmente. Entonces, así como Rob me conoció y como el trabajo que yo hacía en la incubadora, así era como yo era. O sea, era la parte que me encanta de conectar con gente, de platicar con la gente, de ver estas oportunidades de negocio. ¿Y por qué considero que me considero un embajador de marca? Porque nuestra misión dentro de GrowthHax, eso es lo que Rob y yo somos. Y somos una extensión de nuestra misión y siempre tratamos de predicar con el ejemplo y ayudar a los emprendedores. Y una de nuestras partes principales dentro de GrowthHax es la parte de la conexión humana. Esa parte es clave. De que a pesar de que es negocio, a pesar que hay dinero de por medio, a pesar de que existe tecnología y que es virtual o lo que tú quieras, nunca olvidar de que detrás de cada emprendimiento hay un ser humano. Y entonces, la parte de la conexión humana ha sido clave dentro de nuestras mentorías y dentro de la manera en la que hacemos negocios. Yo creo que Rob lo va a decir, que es como, hacer el bien mientras haces dinero. O sea, se puede generar dinero e ingresos, pero siempre haciendo lo que es el bien. Entonces la parte de la conexión humana ha sido clave para nosotros y nosotros somos embajadores de esa misma misión y visión que tenemos como empresa. Y cómo podemos invitar más gente de igual manera, porque la gente que nosotros impactamos, ya sea que nos recomiendan o ya sea que invitan a otra gente o ellos impactan a otra gente, se convierte como en esta cadenita de que ya recibí yo ayuda de ustedes, ahora yo quiero ayudar a otra gente. Y hay gente que se ha convertido en mentores con nosotros, hay gente que ha apoyado a otros emprendedores. Cuando les pedimos alguna ayuda o asesoría, inmediatamente dicen claro que sí. Entonces se han convertido en embajadores de nuestra misma misión, que es justamente como tú lo comentas, o sea, como tú nos has echado tantas flores, gracias por eso mismo que has conocido nuestro trabajo. Entonces, esa es la mejor manera de ser un embajador, predicando con el ejemplo y dejando que tu trabajo hable por ti.
Excelente, David. Me voy a pasar. Muchas gracias por haber estado aquí. Me voy a pasar con Rob, nos quedan 5 minutos y vamos a seguir en contacto. Te mando un abrazo bien fuerte. Un gusto tenerte.
Gracias, igualmente.
Rob, finally we have 5 minutes to close this episode, and I would like to ask you 3 questions. The first one, mentoring, inspire, empower, and take action. How does GrowthHax see the future in 2020 and 2021? Second question is, how do you consider a brand ambassador, and why Mexico and Latin America needs more brand ambassadors?
Ooh, okay, couple great questions. So I'm on the spot on the prediction, but that's okay because last night I was on a show and I asked someone to predict the next 10 years. So I guess it's fair for me to have to predict the next couple. I think the real answer isn't so much about what is mentoring, how does mentorship play a role, what does mentoring look like in the next couple of years. I think because we all know that it, like everything else in our business, is going to look like this, right? It's going to look like Zoom. It's going to look like WhatsApp. It's going to sound in our earbuds as opposed to sitting across the table and seeing and touching and smelling someone as they're sitting with you. So that's how it's going to look. But I think the more important thing is why it's going to look that way. And this is central to our business. And to be honest, like some of how we have reinvented and refreshed ourselves during this pandemic, which is something that all businesses need to do to thrive and survive going forward, right? We can't just do things the old way they were done. That's no longer acceptable. And so you've got to adapt no matter what your business is if you want to thrive. And so in our case, I think the answer to your question is really that mentorship is going to be more personalized, right? So there's going to be more of this personal one-on-one type of, we call it like personalized learning experiences, right? I think the history of mentorship in Latin America, especially, developing countries especially, in the last 10 years has been around groups, right? And events and speed and impersonal approach, right? Like we just throw a bunch of smart people with big titles down at the table, and then we throw a bunch of young entrepreneurs next to them, and we tell them they have 2 minutes and they're supposed to get all this knowledge and wisdom from the smart people who work for big companies. And that's just a terrible model. All due respect, like it's better than nothing. And David and I like hate that phrase, right? Like, okay, I get it. It's better than nothing, but it's not enough. Hold on one sec. And so I think you're going to see this emergence, we believe you're going to continue to see an emergence of these personalized educational experiences, right? So programs, content, curriculum, relationships that are designed to suit your needs. So what does Humberto need to learn and understand in his business? And then how can we match him with the people, with the knowledge, with the resources that he or she needs to run their business in their city at this moment, understanding their conditions. And then try and figure out the organizations that will win at delivering that for the masses will figure out how to deliver that kind of personalized educational experience at scale, right? So David always reminds me, like, millennials love to consume content on their own, right? And not on a fixed schedule. And so this world of, scheduling events at a certain time and then expecting everybody to show up and sit quietly in class, like that world is quickly dying, right? And so the world is quickly evolving to, we record this whenever it's convenient for us. We publish it, you publish it out into the world, and then it can be consumed and learned from at any point along the way by people in their worlds, in their ways, on their terms, right? So if some young mother who's running a business on the side on the weekends in Puebla wants to learn from this podcast or our Mentors Today podcast or our Conversations video series that we produce, and they want to do that at 2:00 in the morning on a Saturday because that's when their kids are asleep, and that's when their husband's asleep, and that's when they can actually work on their side proyecto, then that's the way that the world should work. Like, we should all build our services and platforms to serve the needs of people when people want to consume it on their terms. So I think that's going to be the fundamental shift that David and I believe is coming. And we're adapting to try and do that. But then also in our B2B enterprise business, we're trying to convince and educate our institutional partners in Latin America, the universities, the governments, the NGOs, the private capital people like VCs and angel groups, the corporates. We're trying to help educate them so that they understand that they need to build the next generation of their programs and their content and their curriculum to serve their communities of entrepreneurs in those ways as well. And that's going to be slow to come. It's not going to happen overnight, right? And everybody's going to use, institutionally, everybody's going to use the excuse of the pandemic.
So just to close the program, I would like to have this more until 8 a.m., 8 p.m., but it's not
no, it's okay. It's been really enjoyable. I'm glad we both got to share our stories. You know, my partner David from Tijuana, who was with us earlier, and me while I was out on my walk, my socially distanced, masked, healthy pandemic walk here in Los Angeles on a Friday morning, taking calls and doing podcast interviews. So it's been awesome. But you had these two great questions that I wanted to make sure we finished up with.
Sure.
Right. So we just talked about how we see the future of mentorship and entrepreneurs receiving mentorship changing to become more about personalized experiences, right? Like personalized education, consume knowledge, content, services, support, consume it on your terms, right? So I think two things. You talk about brand ambassadors, right? And the importance of relationships with brands, and then the importance of those or the relevance of those in Mexico and Latino America. So I'll talk first from an ambassador standpoint, from like my attitude, our thoughts about that inside of GrowthHax. Right. So very early on in our tenure at GrowthHax, we realized in Latino America that as a small company like we are, we were not going to be able to be everywhere and spread our message everywhere that we would like to reach all at the same time. Right. There were limited resources, and all early stage companies, all small businesses, all startups have this challenge. Right. Is how do we spread our message, but when we can't afford to spread our message. Right. And there are lots of tools and you can do lots of things online, but especially in the Latin culture, especially in Mexico, like where relationships are so important, even in the pandemic, right? Like you trust me because we meet and then I tell you you should trust David and then you trust David because you know me. Right. And so that goes on no matter whether it's through Zoom or whether it's in real life. But the role of a good ambassador or creating a program for ambassadors in your company attached to your brand can be invaluable in that project. And so we did that inside of GrowthHax. Like the answer to the question of how can I spread the message and the word of what we do? How can we build relationships in cities where we are not without having to hire a bunch of employees in those cities? And the answer came back what we call our market partner program. So inside of GrowthHax, there is a sub-community, like a layer of people who are very closely affiliated with everything that we do. They see our services as we're building them. They understand our product mix. They understand our business model. They get inside information from us about why we're doing things that we're doing, where we're going to be next. And then what they do is they are basically like kind of the local face, brand ambassador, right, of GrowthHax in those communities. And we're specifically having them do two things for us. We're having them help us develop relationships and open doors. And then we're having them to help us actually deliver projects in some cases consultatively. So I think for anybody, there's a couple of things to think about. One, ambassadors or brand ambassadors, partners like that in local markets can be hugely beneficial for a small company that doesn't have the budget to hire a bunch of employees. So that's the first point. The second point is, I think in Latino America, they can be hugely beneficial because they help you personally develop credibility and trustworthiness in a community where you don't live or you're not there all the time, right? And then the third thing I think that's really important if you're going to do this is that you have to try and do what we've done, which is to set very specific expectations, right? So this is what I'm asking you to do for us. This is what we're going to do for you. And this is what we hope the outcome is, right? So the more clear the expectations of the relationship with a independent partner, like an ambassador is, I think the more likelihood that there's a better potential that they could have great impact on your business. And it's working for us. We made a commitment to them internally that says, hey, these 18 to 20 people in about 10 or 11 different cities around Latin America, you're young, you're smart, you're connected in your communities, you have a passion for entrepreneurship. Maybe you're running your own small company, your own startup as a founder. we'll help you to develop your businesses, to develop your ideas. You can lean on us for our mentorship and our support in your journey. And then in exchange, we would like you to help us tell our story in your local community when we're not there, right? And so that relationship is developing pretty strongly. I would say to the second part of the question that you asked, like, why does it matter in Latin America? I think I touched on that with the second point, right? Which is, man, relationships, and David said this, I know, in his opening statement, relationships really is all that matters. It's all my friends that are product people that love to invent cool stuff or that think that their platform is the coolest new service platform ever. The reality is, like, relationships and people is what matters when building a business, right? And so using ambassadors as an extension of your brand, as an extension of your presence in Latin America, to me, it's almost like a requirement. Like I almost have a hard time understanding how companies can expand their presence in Latin America and not have like local trusted people that can speak on their behalf. Some companies hire those people. That's great. If you have the budget to do that, you could do that. I think there's a way that you could do that without hiring people. And then maybe those people eventually become the pool of people that you can hire from. Like, so you have this kind of period with each other where you learn each other, you grow together. And then maybe eventually they do wind up working for you, and then it's easier to make a hire. So I think relationships being critical in Latin America is a reason that ambassadors can really work. And again, in our circumstance, it's working for us. Doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody. Every business is different, right? Some businesses, you just have to put your product out there and let people try your product. Some businesses are online, and you just have to leverage the online tools that are available to you. But I think if I could, I wanted to make one last point to everybody that you didn't ask about, but I think is really important today, especially in today's times for all your listeners, right? I mean, here I am in Los Angeles in that beautiful city in the background. I'm out here on a walk. I was wearing a mask when we started. I'm not now because I'm in private, and I wasn't before for some of the show because I was away from everybody else. I was in the corner of a park by myself, distanced. But like, this is a very serious time. Right. And this pandemic is not going to go away anytime soon. And it's going to affect us in the Estados Unidos, in Mexico and Latin America for the rest of this year, I would imagine the rest of next year. And it'll be lingering around and still affecting our businesses and our economies well into 2022. And so my lesson for all of us is like, adapt, learn, pivot if you have to, survive, think creatively, stop complaining about the things that you can't do the way you used to do them, and use the tools and the technologies that are available today to do things the way that we can do them today, because it really doesn't matter. Like, complaining, no one cares, right? Because everybody is struggling in some way or another. It's not just one sector of the economy that is affected by this. We're all affected by this. And so rather than complain as a business owner or as a startup founder, the reality is, like, just lean into this moment and say, okay, these are the conditions that we have been dealt. And so now we have to, like any business person, we have to do the best we can with the conditions that we have been dealt, so that we can go forward and make an impact in the world or build a business the way that we see it should be built. So I'm going to just encourage everybody. It was almost unintentional that today we wound up doing this morning, and I was avoiding garbage trucks and noise in the streets and all these different things. But like, that's what you do, because it was important for us to have this opportunity for David and I to share our story with you, Humberto, and with your audience. And so we're like, okay, if this is how we have to record it today, this is how we have to record it today. Like, we don't always have to be in a studio. You can be like you, sitting with your child on your lap, right? And that does not make the content that we discussed any less important, right? Again, let go of the past, let go of the old world. Don't be in a hurry to try and get back to it. Lean into what we've got right now and build the better new world that we need with your business as a contributor. So those are my closing thoughts. We're grateful. This was awesome, Humberto. Thank you. Thanks for letting us do this way, virtually. And we can't wait to help you promote it, and we can't wait to share it with our audience. I know you're going to put it in the show notes, but people can always find us on the web, growthhax.com. They can find our podcast, which is called Mentors Today. where we interview real entrepreneurs from Latin America and their actual questions. You can find that on all the same podcast channels that you find this one. You can find us in our Mentor Mashup events, which I know David talked about, in different cities or virtually around Latin America as we promote those. And you can always find us on the web at growthhax.com, HHAX.com. And then me and David are super active on Twitter and Instagram, so you can find us out there. Just look for this sweaty big gringo on your social media.
For sure, Rob, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time, and David's too. We really had a great opportunity to discuss several conversations about entrepreneurs and about our countries we're really close by.
Sí.
I appreciate the last words you provide, because it's really important. Yes, and that's why I have my son right here, because he's a COVID generation. He's only 3 months, and he was like, what I'm going to teach him, what's going to be the new world for him in our world, right? So these words that you just told me, I realized that we are more connected than ever. The relationships are getting stronger than ever. The value we are provide to each one, it's getting better. So I would like to share with you and with my audience that this is a great opportunity to become our new version. And brand ambassadors, Embajadores de Marca, that's why I launched the program, because it's more about to provide education, to provide value, to be close by every year, every day, every hour, because that's what we need as a human. And obviously business are getting greater, are getting really quick because of the community and because of the tools. So I appreciate that. I hopefully you have a great time in Embajadores de Marca and brand ambassadors.
Sí, we did. It was awesome. Thank you.
And let me tell you something. I would like to invite you to the next chapter. We're going to launch the second chapter. We're from co-founder, which is located in Argentina and Mexico. We're going to bring more entrepreneurs. So I would like to have you in the second chapter if you would like.
Awesome. Always here to support you, Humberto. Thank you so much.
Perfect, Rob. Well, hopefully
Ciao.
you have a great time, and let's get connected.
Thank you. Ciao. Big hugs. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.